Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the I Hate the Antichrist podcast. This is your host, Aoeui, here to bring you another look at what sin is like. This time, the subject of the day will be the nature of sin. And once again, I've brought an old friend to the podcast, somebody who was on the previous season. We've got Caleb, the Thomist elite. Thank you for listening to the I Hate the Antichrist podcast. IHTA cast is brought to you by W Energy. Great product, great taste, has coffee fruit extract and vitamins and minerals, taurine, tyrosine, glutamine, citrulline. Flavors are pretty good. Please use the code IHTA for 10% off at w.gg. Again, that is coupon code IHTA at the website w.gg. Thank you for listening to the I Hate the Antichrist podcast. IHTA cast is also brought to you by WebArchist. BJ has been great. The designs and the website, and therefore the podcast. Website design in the Liberty space. She's a great person, and she helps very much with all the issues I could possibly have. So if you want to support her and get your own website, please visit webarchist.com. Again, she's awesome, so check her out at webarchist.com. Thank you, BJ. Back to the podcast. As I would like to call him, Caleb, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I would push back on that title. My Thomism is, I have the complete set of Summa, and I'm going through it slowly. I more or less call myself an Aristotelian because I how to put this. I can, because I know what's an Aristotle, I can deduce the proper Thomistic principles from my friend on podcasts, and nine times out of 10 I'm correct, but I defer to St. Thomas in all things.
There you go. All right, well, awesome. I brought on a Catholic this episode because we're going to be talking about the nature of sin, and you all know that I like to portray a more different position on the agreements and disagreements between Catholics and Protestants. I don't know if you've heard this from me before, Caleb, but I have this sort of position where I think all the different sides of Christianity are really trying to say the same thing, but there's like a difference in definition, and that's more what causes the fighting than anything.
Yeah, wasn't it said in Galatians or something where it's like don't argue over don't argue over words, but argue over the meaning of
Exactly.
words? I think it was Jimmy Akin debated James White like a couple of weeks ago, and the point Jimmy Akin made the point that James is like, no, we actually agree basically all the way. You refuse to accept that all definitions mean the same thing.
Exactly.
That was kind
And
of the argument.
even the greater explanation of these things, like if you take all of the definitions that one side uses and all of the definitions that the other side uses, and you try to figure out what they're both what each one is saying individually, they're really saying the same thing. Like one of the
Like,
things that I find the funniest is church infallibility can be considered to be a sola scriptura doctrine, and vice
you can,
versa.
I think you can make that argument. My example that I would give is I give the essence and energy versus divine simplicity from the Orthodox and Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
That they really, the essence and energy works as a wonderful analogy, basically explaining the same thing as we have with divine mysteries. The Orthodox just don't want to accept we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that's my example where if you are faithful and you are trying to follow truth, God being truth, with divine graces being imparted to us, I think you're going to get very close, and it's only through language and fallible. I'm not going to affirm a mini church doctrine that we're all actually part of the body of Christ. I would still say this would be conversions, obviously, but I think the insistence on our differences that time is past. We're in the age of information now. There's a different time period. There are Muslims raiding Europe. Indians are everywhere. We should be focusing on where we agree and not so much where we disagree.
Yeah, that would bring a lot more peace as well.
I agree. Like we've been able to afford these conversations of disagreements because we were the dominant world religion. That's fading, so we kind of need to snap out of our disagreements and get back to it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my position.
Dominant world religion, if you consider atheism a religion, which I personally do.
Yeah, I would say it is. But but atheists don't just have like the non-claims. There are a lot of moral claims attached to this. Atheists, all
Exactly.
atheists end up being scientific materialists, and I would argue the materialist meta narrative or lack thereof is a religion.
Yeah. And people like to say that Islam is growing, but they don't seem to realize that Islam is growing by birth rate. It's not growing by conversion.
Yeah,
Islam's conversion is at an all time low, and their apostasy rate is at an all time high. And it's only accelerating.
win for us. Win for us.
Yep,
Um,
absolute win for us, especially with the fact that so many people are reconverting.
I wonder how many Muslims saw Andrew Tate convert and were like, "I'm out, dog."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like,
I gotta
are
see what
we
numbers that
embracing this
is.
guy? Are we embracing this guy who
But like,
said
oh, seriously?
to bang trannies and that's the straightest thing you can do? Like, is that really where we're going with this?
Oh,
Hmm.
I,
What's the phrase?
speaking of
Stuck for the law, stuck for the law.
speaking of Muslim stuff, I don't know if are you on TikTok at all?
No, no, I
Okay,
refuse.
I don't blame you. I'm on
I only
TikTok.
want my data stolen by American mega corporations.
I'm only on TikTok more from like not from my own enjoyment, from like a sociological lens. Like I constantly I'm refreshing my feed or resetting my algorithm so I can kind of just keep a sense of what's going on, what's popular and such. Um, but I will say the Christian Muslim TikTok wars are incredible.
Oh yeah.
It's constantly making edits of like King Baldwin or Duke Godfrey of Bouillon versus like Saladin and all those people. And the best thing I saw was during Ramadan, you had Christians posting delicious food, going hashtag Ramadan and tagging Muslim apologists, which is an insane thing to do. It's like, whoa, dude, that is that's something else. Like taunting them and they can't eat is like an insane thing to do. But it was hilarious.
Wow, that's funny.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, um, let's take a look see here. I like to have my guests introduce themselves mostly, so go ahead and tell the people what you've been getting into, what you've been working on, and all that.
Sure. I run the Thomist Reviews YouTube channel and Substack. I know the name is not the greatest. We've tried several. Well, we want to relabel, but we just relabeled again like less than 6 months ago, so we're gonna wait a little bit. Um, we do philosophy, theology, politics, mainly from like a very much from a Catholic bent. Like there's Thomist Reviews. We're all Thomists on the channel. It's not just me. There's Ein, Bodes, Connor, David. We have several other people who write articles and make podcasts on there. So we do DK Chesterton from like a localist, distributivist view for politics. We have the Thomist view for like philosophy and theology. We do a history of philosophy series, David and I. And so we kind of just cover the point of the podcast, I would say, isn't really like it's not education per se. It's to model conversations about the faith and how you can take these conversations that we're having and learn how to properly communicate and talk about these things. So it's not pure education; it's more style. It's like how do you have these conversations?
Hmm, hmm.
And so we try to make everything into a That's why I have the Explain to Me Like I'm Five series, in which I have a very complicated topic, but I have the guests break it down and explain it simply, so you can learn how to take those ideas and communicate them to others.
Man, that's awesome.
I enjoy
Well,
it.
like I said a little bit ago, we're going to be focusing on the nature of sin. My last couple episodes, I've been covering this pamphlet I've been writing. I'm not sure whether it's going to stay pamphlet sized or grow at all. Um, my anti theology, as I
Mm-hmm.
like to call it. I'm not sure if it should get a better name because I'm not against theology, obviously.
Yeah.
The theology of the Antichrist, and how I've brought this to both a Catholic priest and an Orthodox priest just to see what they'd say about it. And both of them said that they could pretty much affirm everything it says. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really cool to me. I brought it to a couple Protestant denominations, and both of them have affirmed it. So I'm really hoping that this can be used to bring Christians together. I think
Yeah.
the main point of it is I kind of have two main overarching ideas I want to make sure are focused on, and that should be the focus. Number one, sin is bad, but the fact that you sin and the fact that sin is bad should not be a cudgel.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. I think that's a very direct biblical thing to say. And then the other thing is that the fact that all are sinners is not a reason to just sit there rebuking everyone. It's the proof that everyone needs a savior just as
Mm-hmm.
much as anyone else.
On that first point you made about sin is bad, but it's going to be a cudgel. I can't remember where I saw it, but I think it was a priest I was listening to said when speaking about like sex work and like pornography, he said while you should not watch it, it is bad. You could always seek forgiveness. What the demons and devil want is not for you to be falling back into lust again and again and again. They don't mind that. What they want is for you to go into despair about your sin, and so you can never get over it. And it's the despair
Exactly.
over sin that is actually harmful and dreadful, which is why I personally love Confessor because I'm there every week. Every week I'm in there. Even if I don't think I need it, I'm just like, I'll do examination of conscience. I'm sure I'll find something I did wrong.
Exactly.
But when it comes, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Okay, when it comes to like the nature of sin, um, I'm going to I want to preface it real quick. I'm going to get my definition of nature of sin from St. Thomas Aquinas, being a Thomist, Thomist hack that I am. And when St. Thomas Aquinas defines sin, I can't remember where it's at he defines it. He mainly has a breakdown of it in the Prima Secundae, which is the first part of the second part.
Hmm.
But in the supplementum, he has a whole section where it's on confessing and the sacraments, and he had defined sin by just going straight to Chirac. And I didn't look it up beforehand, but I'm pretty sure it's Chirac 10:2, which defines sin as pride. The root of all sin is pride. I think is what he said for it, and his argument for that being the first sin, not all sin. The first like sin he committed was that of angels, which was the sin of pride that Lucifer had towards God. And
Hmm.
so it's the pride of is not only a sin we can commit, it's an angelic sin as well. The cause of all demons was pride. The cause of all disorder was pride. If you want to get like a Lord of the Rings analogy, Melanchor's pride in his own singing compared to everyone else's singing at the great beginning was Luvatar would be like a Lord of the Rings analogy to apply to it.
One of my favorite things that I like to point out, and I probably point this out at least once an episode, is the first sin came after the first mistake.
Mm.
That the first mistake would have been. It was clear that Adam and Eve had a novel human-made tradition of saying that you can't even touch the tree of knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and that one of the things when the serpent in the Hebrew, when you read Genesis, I think it's 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the serpent deceives Eve into taking the apple. There's a verb there that's basically like see, and he hands it to her. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
touch it,
Yeah.
and
Which
that's not the first sin. It's still a mistake. It was the
mm-hmm.
first mistake, but the sin was letting that mistake deceive you.
Mm. My view of I think that's true. When I think about this story, my first thought when it comes to like Eve eating the apple was that the promise that Satan made to Eve that he'd be like God, and so it was the first sin was done out of pride for wanting to be like God, under a
Yes.
lie from the great deceiver, under the promise of equality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have equality, pride, and lying, which I would say are the three biggest sins in the modern world.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
that's how I would argue in like a Luciferian culture almost. But I don't like using the word Luciferian culture because I sound like a boomer grandparent.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're based. So what are you gonna do?
It's interesting. A lot of people don't even mean pride when they say pride nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
They don't mean, feel good about a thing. They mean, that's because that's not what pride is. What they mean is you shouldn't feel bad, or you should feel good that
Yeah.
you have this certain trait, like
Mm-hmm.
white pride or black pride or pride in your child or whatever. I don't think that's the pride that the Bible is calling a sin. The
Yeah.
pride that the Bible is calling a sin is the pride of having a narcissistic, undeserved position.
Yeah. It's the how would I put this? It is the claim that you deserve more than you do.
Yeah, which is textbook narcissism.
Yes. Well, speaking of
So
narcissism, no, what? That's probably too raunchy of a topic. I will save that for after the conversation. If you
no, no,
still,
my podcast can talk about that kind of stuff
okay, did
if
you
you
see
want.
what Billie Eilish said in the Newsweek, the Rolling Stones interview recently?
In front of the mirror.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw my tweet or not, but I said this new narcissist remake sounds like ass.
That's
But
funny.
it's an insane level of pride, and it's just like I mean, once you put it, like, it makes a deeper connection with yourself. And I'm like, I've made this point before that our happiest moments are when we're outside of ourselves, when we're so absorbed into something else that we even forget the passage of time. We almost forget we're actually present. You know,
Hmm.
when we're just so engrossed in an activity or in a conversation or in a moment or even in a piece of art that we kind of just forget we're there. And that's because at root we kind of suck because we're fallen creatures, and that when you're stuck in your own mind, you're going to be fallen. Which is why I think the problem with modern psychology, because when you lack a theology, your psychology will become your theology.
Hmm.
Which I think is again stems back to pride because it's a culture of self obsessive.
See here. So, let's we'll keep going off of more modern topics for a little bit. So, obviously, there's a lot of modern sins we could talk about here. I think one of the most annoying right now is, and we already touched on pride in general. But I think one of the most annoying right now is the how do I put it? There's a type of, okay, you know what? I'll start with this one. Did you watch you might not have watched it. It's pretty long. Did you watch the 4 hour long Mike Winger takedown on Benny Hinn?
I can't stand Mike Wingo, so no.
You what?
I don't like Mike Wingo, so no, I have not seen that.
Okay.
And
I
I will
ha-
say my dislike for him is very stupid. It's just that he made a very bad video responding to Trent Horn where he called Trent Horn a liar, and Trent Horn's my guy, like probably my second biggest influence in conversion. So I mean, it's like I'm out, can't watch this guy
okay.
anymore.
Well, he doesn't really talk about anything like that at all in his Benny Hinn takedown.
Who's Benny Hinn?
Um, Benny Hinn is probably one of the most famous faith healers.
Okay.
He's a televangelist faith healer. He's the type
Oh,
of dude to
okay.
smack you on the forehead and then you fall over and stuff.
My
Yeah,
church had a few visitors like that
yeah,
growing up. Protestant church growing up.
yeah.
Mm,
That's the not supposed to be like that.
yeah.
From any side of the aisle is that not supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
anyway. Benny Hinn is a perfect example of using the Lord's name in vain.
Mm.
So like obviously there's the use of the Lord's name in vain as in like using curse words, and I'm going to say them because I think saying them in an example is not blasphemous. So
Yeah, I agree.
phrases like "god damn"
Hmm.
or I don't know, "oh my god" and stuff like that. A lot of people find those to be blasphemous. I don't know about "oh my god."
Yeah, I don't find "oh my god" to be blasphemous, but I do try to avoid it. Unless it's like, how to put it, I'm very good about when I do actually say like, "Oh my god, please help this person."
Yeah,
I'm
try to
very
make
good.
it an
Like,
actual.
yeah, when immediately when I start saying like, "And I need to finish this thought with a prayer," or I hope
Yeah,
that the intention of my mind, God is like, I understand you're very upset praying for this. You're upset this guy's doing stupid. I understand you're trying to make a prayer. You just get you angry to finish it. I'll finish it.
yeah, that it's more than just an exclamation, that it's like a
Yeah.
genuine "oh my god, please help this person," or "oh my god, please save me," or
Like,
something depending on the
I,
context.
I think of Holy Mary, Mother of God, like in the scenes of Pirates of the Caribbean when Mr. when the guy sees all the sunken ships, like Mary, Mother of God. It's like, yes, okay, that one's in shock, but also like a desperation claim. Where
Yeah,
I think that one's fine as well. I think those are. They are, that's the tricky part of language. The inflection does make a big difference. Well, that's why the Aquinas has like three articles on just inflection when it comes like direct actions about sin, because like the inflection does make a difference here.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
So you're saying about
Um,
Benny Hill? You're saying
yeah, Benny Hinn, this
Benny Hinn?
dude. So what he would do is he would have so actually no. What he did, what he does still, he used to be just like an old-fashioned faith healer televangelist type, but not like a normal one. He would be the type of person to be like, you'll get more blessings the more you send to this ministry,
Ooh, one
up
of
to
those
saying like
types.
you should send $1,000, $2,000.
The prosperity gospel types.
Yeah,
Yeah,
prosperity, word of faith,
liberation
uh,
theology in Brazil and South
name it and
America.
claim it.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible
Yeah.
stuff. Um, and so Mike Winger did a 4 hour long video just analyzing everything he did,
Mm-hmm.
comparing it to the Bible, the Gospel, and the Old Testament alike, showing every single spot where Benny Hinn directly violates the law. Sorry. Showing every single instance of Benny Hinn. Sorry, not showing every single instance. That would probably take literally years. Showing in as many instances as he can fit in this reasonably long video of Benny Hinn doing stuff like injuring people during their faith healing thing. Like okay, he would call people up, and he makes it look on TV like people are being called up for healing.
Mm-hmm.
But the people aren't supposed to come up unless they're already being healed. Like, yeah, okay, buddy.
That's
I'm not the
insane.
healer. Jesus is the healer. Don't bring up the people who are not healed all the way. And so this is probably the biggest takedown on this guy that
Mm.
anyone's ever made. He already tried putting in a copyright claim on Mike Winger, and Mike Winger won the copyright claim on YouTube outright two
Good,
times
good.
in a row, which is unheard of in YouTube.
Mm.
Absolutely unheard of, because he used actual clips. But I mean, his work was transformative. He was fully within fair use.
Mm-hmm.
And man, he did such a good job just listing out every single thing that this dude does. And
Mm.
the this is pride. This is
Mm.
100% pride on Benny Hinn's part. This is true pride. This is thinking that you deserve this money from the people of God because you're some sort of preacher man.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's obviously sin. But I'm interested in what you have to say on it from a Catholic perspective.
Well, I mean, obviously it's insane. Any prosperity gospel thing is insane to me. It reminds me of this. Well, two things. One, it reminds me of Saint Francis of Assisi and his insistence on poverty. What's if anyone gets a chance to read anything on Saint Francis, it's very hard not to be spiritually intimidated uh,
Mm-hmm.
for him, because you read about his the almost obsession like quality with poverty, and it's just hard not to look at every nice thing you have and feel awful. Like it's almost like he's bullying you for having things. Feels like, um, he's not, but you begin to look at your life differently. Um, and it reminds me of this line from I can't remember. I'm Catholic, so I'm not gonna remember where it's at in the Bible, but it was our Lord said, it is easier for a witch man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle. Um, what's led to I think it was Chesterton who said, the solution by modern man is to genetically engineer smaller camels and make bigger needles, which I think is a fantastic line. When it comes to, it's a pretty good line. um, when it comes to that kind of pride, it is like you said earlier, it's a sense of like, I deserve this money because I am a face healer kind of thing, where it's like, okay, you don't deserve anything. Like, we don't deserve. Like, we should all be eternally thankful and remember that Christ's justice is mercy. And that if it was any,
Hmm.
if our sense of justice, and our fallen human concept of justice was God's justice, we would all be in hell. So we should be thankful for God's mercy. And so when you start to think, I've earned this, or I deserve this, or because I have done this for God, therefore I should have this thing now. It's like God. It's not a give and take. We are trying to be fully aligned with the Father, not
Yeah.
in this give and take. Like, well, God, I won 5 souls. Where's my new Bentley? Like, that's not like the mindset one should have. Like, you're not negotiating with the Father here. You should be trying to serve the Father, align one's will with the
Exactly.
Father.
And what does, I believe it's a line from Christ. What does Christ say about good things, that you shouldn't worry about your good things here, that giving them all up is perfectly okay, and that
Mm-hmm.
you should be storing up goods for yourself in heaven instead?
Yeah, something along those lines. I'm the absolute worst at remembering scriptures word for word. Um,
We need Sam Shamoon here.
we do. I like Sam.
Oh,
I
that
don't
guy's
I
great.
don't know where it saw, but he was arguing with like some Muslim guy, and a Muslim guy started to cut him off, so he just started screaming, "Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!" at the guy. And I was like, I don't know what the context is, but this is my new guy. This is my guy right now.
Yeah, Sam Shamoon's hilarious, especially when he. I actually don't really care for when he talks to people who get angry at him, who are like yelling and stuff. I
Hmm.
prefer when they're like quiet about. They'll say something. They'll say something stupid that like destroys the precepts of Islam, and he'll be like, "Oh, no, no, wait, but you just buried your own prophet by saying I'm wrong." And then he points to them wearing the Quran. What's crazy is that the dude knows the Quran and the Bible like word for word,
Hmm.
not just in the English, but in the Arabic or Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic.
Incredible.
He knows it by the different versions. Like, dude,
Yeah.
this is some insane level. How do you memorize like that?
I don't know, and but I've been my memorizing scripture stuff. St. Thomas Aquinas memorized the whole Bible. And I've been pushed on like, how could someone do that? I'm like, well, I don't know about y'all, but our saints have something called the Holy Spirit that can help them. And that's really just my only account. Like, I don't think our human minds are capable of that. I think only through the Holy Spirit and these sanctifying graces that God has given us can that even be done.
Yeah, certain people are given certain gifts. Obviously,
Yeah.
some people have the
But
gift of
speaking on that,
memorization.
memorizing the Bible thing, I have to bring this up on every podcast almost because it's so infuriating to me. Do you know who Peter Peter Safer is?
I do not. Oh wait, Peter
Okay,
Schaefer?
yeah, that his
Yeah,
name?
yeah, I've heard the name before at least.
Okay, he apparently was very popular, like Protestant apologetic and like historian. I
Yeah.
don't know much of his work. I just know he did a 10-part documentary on the early Christians. But he's very not 10-part documentaries on like on history of Christianity, and he's very openly biased towards the Catholic side of the medieval days, where
Hmm.
he has a guy in costume dressed as St. Thomas Aquinas. And he makes this huge point that Aquinas relied more on the philosophy of the pagan Greeks than the words of God. And he has Aquinas like closing the
Uh.
Bible and ignoring it. I'm like, dude, Aquinas, St. Thomas had it memorized. What are you talking about? He didn't need to have it next to him. He had it memorized. If you ever read any of his homilies or any of his writings, he uses biblical references like I would use punctuations. Like he knew that Bible. He knew his Bible. So this idea that he focused more on Greek philosophy than the Holy Scriptures, like shut up. You don't know what you're talking about.
I can't think of anyone up until actually I can't think of anyone at all who did that, really. Who
It's
actually genuinely focused more on like applying Greek philosophy and then adding a Christian painting to the outside of
yeah,
it.
no, I can't think of anyone. All the good saints have not. None of the saints have done that I can think of.
I can't think of any theologian period, even Protestant ones that have done
If I
that.
had to guess one, I can't remember his name, but there was a Eastern Orthodox philosopher who became so obsessed. No, I would argue maybe it is David Bentley Hart, but he's more of a philosopher and a theologian anyway. But
Uh,
there have been several Orthodox philosophers who, by studying essence and energies, end up becoming neo-pagans. Not neo-pagans, Neo-Platonists.
gross.
Neoplatonists,
Oh, okay.
very. I keep wanting to say neo-pagans and Neoplatonists because the one pagan friend I have is a Neoplatonist, and so I keep wanting to conflate the two. If you listen to this, homies, I apologize for getting those confused. Um, if you ever get a chance to, I don't know if you want to talk to any pagans or not, but there's a guy on Twitter called Hermes the Thrice Blessed. He's a Neoplatonist pagan who has really good understanding of like the philosophical arguments for paganism. Very
Hmm.
fascinating person to talk to. He has a heavy Louisianan accent though, and so he's just bringing up the Dianese and all these other stuff. And I'm like, dude, you sound like you should be on a crawfish on an airboat. And you're explaining Plato to me. This is honestly incredible. Great guy. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, I highly recommend it. Phenomenal person.
I'll have to ask you to send me that guy's name after the podcast in
Will do.
writing.
Um,
Um,
but what we yeah, so that was this little tangent I had to go off about my rant with Peter Safel because he's still brought up by like Doug Wilson and James Wright bring him up every once in a while. Like it has authoritative source, and I'm like, that guy didn't know what he was talking about. I refuse to listen to this anymore.
no, I don't hate on Neoplatonism as much as I do most of the philosophies, because I mean it's not a huge leap to go from the realm of forms to the realm of God.
No, I don't think it's very easy to think to make that leap. I
Yeah.
I mean I'm of the opinion that Socrates was a pre-Christian model because he
Ah.
and my argument for this is twofold. One, it is that he believed his God had to be all truth, good, and beautiful. And that was
Yes.
like the form of truth, good, and beauty. And then he chose to die for that instead of denying it or affirming paganism. And then he was a stonecutter. And so he had made a thing like for the unknown God was what he called his God. And that might have been
Yeah.
the same thing St. Paul pointed to when arguing with the Greeks.
I
And
was
so that's
thinking
my
that the second you named it.
so that's my argument that St. Paul basically just was like, no, Socrates is right. And he pointed to that, gestured into that, and pointed that Socrates was correct about it. And you kind of killed the man who was correct for this.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my
Yeah,
argument that Socrates
absolutely.
is a pre-Christian model. And from his Socrates, if you count Socrates, I think you have to count Plato and Aristotle as pre-Christian philosophers, which is why in some cathedrals they have green halos, representing they were like pre-Christ prophets or prophets of
Interesting.
reason. Mm.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, God gives us all gifts, and Greece is very close. It's just across the pond
Mm-hmm.
from ancient Judea. So, I mean, the ancient Judeans, when they were described by the Romans and other surrounding people, as they were considered to be a philosophical people, like the
Mm-hmm.
Greeks were.
Mm.
I believe that was Pliny the Elder
I
who wrote
wonder
it,
if
who wrote of them like that.
any of Plato's students had cool conversations with rabbis. Or the
Probably.
equivalent of that. Like I bet there was probably some cool conversations that we'll never get to hear about because no one wrote them down. But I bet there were some cool conversations.
Man, if only we could just like send people back to the past with recording equipment.
Oh, that would honestly be a fun like podcast theme. Is you get guys who are experts in these time periods, and it's like you're gonna play a role like a stage performance almost. He like give him to write out scripts of how the argument would go or the conversation would go, like a dialogue, and then hire like voice actors to act it out.
That would be really cool.
That'd be a
That'd be
fun little
really cool.
project.
Did I ever tell you? I think I might have told you last time about this podcast that I want to make. This is a complete tangent, but since we're on the topic of different ideas for podcasts, I had an idea for a podcast called the Steelman Podcast,
Mm-hmm.
where you get two experts in their fields who disagree with one another on their position, and you have them take the other person's position and try to argue for it and steelman it as best as they possibly can.
That would be fun. There's actually something similar. It was Trent Horn and Ben Watkins did a devil's advocate debate where Trent took the pro-choice side and David Watkins took the pro-life side. And
Yeah, something like that.
it's a very fun debate to listen to because I will say hearing an atheist make the Christian argument for pro-life from an atheist framework is actually very interesting, and hearing Trent Horn try to argue like an atheist is kind of funny.
Interesting. Yeah, seeing it'd be kind of similar to that, but instead of it being like a devil's advocate where you advocate for a certain position based on your already existing point of view, you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to actually argue from the other person's
Mm.
point of view without straw manning. And that's where
That
the
would be fun.
comedy comes from. That's where the challenge comes from.
That would be.
So imagine
I would have a blast doing that.
Richard Dawkins versus Lane Craig. William Lane Craig advocating for atheism and Richard Dawkins advocating for Christianity. And then they just get into a devolving debate where like, no, I wouldn't say that, William. Like
That would be hilarious.
you
Now I
would
would
have
have.
to have one hell of a host.
You would. You would need a killer host. I feel like the only person I could think of who comes to mind would be someone like Michael Knowles. Because he
Yeah.
has that, he's a great like people person and conversationalist, and is just coy enough to have fun with it.
Yeah.
um,
Joe Rogan.
no, I would have so much fun if I had to do a steel man of the atheist position. Like you could take a philosophical materialist, like naturalist side to it all, or you could just do like the entrenched, like well you can't prove that, and I get to have more fun. So why would I not want to have? Like take the hedonistic route.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
like steel man
exactly.
hedonism could be steel man and hedonism would be a very fun thing to try to do.
For me, my position would be actually moral relativism is correct, and that's good.
Oh, this think like a post. My mind is was fun ideas you could, arguments you could take. Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd
Um,
be a good one.
so
Okay. Yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead.
when Nature said, I'm gonna try to pull us back real quick. When you mentioned sin, that's like the annoying sin, of like the you started off like saying like a sin that's like annoying to you today would be like the sin of pride that these like televangelists have. To
Yeah.
me, I think the most annoying like accepted sin is lying. And I don't mean like just
Yeah.
like white lies. I mean like the insistence that falsehood is truth, and you have to conform to that.
Yeah.
Specifically comes to mind is the transgender issue, um, and
Affirmative
the
healthcare.
affirmative healthcare, transgender issues, even like the ways gay and lesbians want to define things. Like I don't care if you, okay, generally, yes, you should not be living in sin. But I have so many other things I'm worried about that unless it's like a person I like, am related to, I'm not going to argue it. You know, like yeah, you
Yeah.
shouldn't be living in sin. You shouldn't be doing that. That is bad. You shouldn't do it. But at the end of the day, the most I can do is pray for you because I'm not going to. It's going to be almost impossible to argue you out of that position. But they're insistent that I have to affirm their delusion is what annoys me more than anything. I have to
Yeah.
affirm these delusions.
If you
And
don't call me a woman, you're a bad person.
yeah, like that, like the insistence that I join in the lie to justify their delusion is what drives me insane. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like they can't just go out and sin on their own. They have to rope you into their sin, and that's what really bugs me about it. Like, you can't just be content to sin on your own. You're only happy when you've convinced everyone else to join in your delusion. That's
Yeah,
what really drives me insane.
you have to share in my delusion with me, otherwise you are against me. It's 100% what it is.
I am against
And
you. Do I
there's
normally
a
what I would say?
there's a darkness to that, man. There's a darkness to that because it's literally trying to pull people into what this person is believing. And there's not anything. I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here. There's not anything wrong on your own side if you have your delusion and it's a genuine delusion. Like, I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that you're awful for doing that, but like, it's so much worse to try to lead other people astray into your
Mm-hmm.
delusions.
Well,
Like, like,
that gets to the. Go
when,
ahead.
uh, so a lot of people like to use this verse for saying we should drown pedophiles to death, but it actually is more related to what I'm talking about here, where
The sin of scandal.
you these those who would lead the least of these little ones to sin would be better off to be drowned. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not what that means. That's not what the phrase "to lead someone to sin" means. It doesn't mean to molest them like pedophiles do to children. It means to literally lead another person onto the path of sin
Mm-hmm.
as if it's some sort of moral path.
Mm-hmm.
I think
This
it's Matthew 22:14 or something like that,
I have my Bible in front of me. Let me just look real quick.
or maybe 18:19,
I'm looking. Plot to kill
something around there.
Jesus. 24.
No, that's for the tax.
I'm not seeing.
17.
Okay, I'm in the wrong book completely.
Yeah, it's in Luke 17. There might be a version of it in Matthew, but
Yeah.
yeah, Matthew 18, yeah. Matthew 18:6. If anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me that during like the Inquisition, most of the people who were put to death weren't those who were practicing sin. It was those who were lying, saying it's not a sin.
Yeah.
Like the church took a much bigger issue where it's like, no, people sin all the time and that's bad, but we have confession. It's far more disastrous for the sinner and for the community at large to argue, no, it's not a sin. That's
Yeah,
far more
exactly.
dangerous and deadly, and that is the sin of scandal. And that's why I think the Vatican was actually just completely justified in giving the states authority to say, no, state, yeah, go ahead. Oftentimes the Vatican was like, hey, apologize and you can live. And the guys were like, no, I don't want to. Like, well, the state's going to kill you if you don't. Can you please apologize? No, fine. State can kill you now. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, when it comes to, maybe it's because I'm a papist, but when it comes to most things people complain about the church for, I'm like, no, that was probably a good thing. Like locking up Galileo, I don't mind that one. I don't mind it.
What was the I know that he wasn't actually interred for saying that the heliocentric model was the right way to
Mm-hmm.
go, and that the was it the
What
uh
happened was
terracentric.
he came to the Vatican and was like, the Earth is not the center of the solar system, the Sun is. And the Pope was like, cool. Do you have evidence for this? And he really didn't have any complete evidence. He kind of had a theory and no real proof for it yet. And the Pope was like, okay, well, come back to me when you have proof. And if it's true, we'll happily say it's true. Until you have proof, we're not going to affirm a serious fact. That's how we do science today. Well,
Yeah.
that's how we're supposed to do science today. Um, but Galileo, instead of going back to do more research, he wrote a play where basically he wrote a play and performed a play and produced it in the Vatican City, about how the Pope was an idiot for not agreeing with them. So the Pope was like, dude, you can't do that. I got to put you on house arrest for the rest of your life. But also, here's some servants and a telescope and continue doing your work because I would love to see what you come up with. Like, he was allowed to live on house arrest with servants and do his science experiments uninterrupted. He just called the Pope an idiot publicly and did a play about it. The Pope was like, dude, you kind of forced my hand here. I can't let you continue doing this.
Yeah. Pope can't take disrespect. Not allowed.
Better not step to the Pope. Swiss guards are going to get you.
Yeah. I'm okay with doing it because I'm a filthy, filthy prote. But
um,
all right, so we've covered those two issues. Another prominent issue is coming from the complete other side. I touched on this in my last episode, and I'm curious as to what your position is here. But I actually take a huge issue with Christian nationalism, and here's why. Here's why. There's no such thing. This is my position. There is no actual such thing. You can either be nationalist or you can be Christian. They are directly opposed, and that is to the degree where I have been like, okay, so you either want nationalism that has a Christian aesthetic to it, or you want Christianity across the nation, but you don't actually want nationalism. I have not seen a single person describe it in a way where they want Christianity to be part of a nationalist system.
I am indifferent to the whole Christian nationalist thing because it just seems like a very partisan notion. And it seems to me like to kind of fit in with like the American meta narrative and ideology. I'm an integralist when it comes to like national politics And so it's kind of like, no, there are two swords, and there's the spiritual power and the temporal power, and the temporal power should have its authority, but also is to be subservient to spiritual matter, the spiritual authority and spiritual matters. Now, I'm not saying the Pope should be king. I'm just saying if the king is going to be a king, the Pope's the crown the king, and the king does listen to the Pope when it comes to spiritual matters, such as what is a sin and what is not a sin. But like how you should build the roads, the temporal matter, so that's to belong to the temporal authority. So the whole Christian nationalism thing is it's such an American and Protestant thing that's like it's just outside my realm of
Oh,
study.
okay.
That's kind of like okay. I mean, I see people making arguments for it, and I'm kind of like, hey man, if you want to have if you want to have Christianity be the enforced dominant religion or culturally enforced religion, I mean, you do you. I'm going to claim to be Catholic, and if you wanted to mandate Catholicism, I'd say probably not. But also, again, we speak of scale is really when this gets into the issue for me. That yeah,
Mhm.
force the entire nation to convert, probably not a great idea. But having a way like, hey, you get tax cuts if you're a Christian in a small town, and that's to encourage more Christians living there and not leaving, and discourage atheists from moving there. I don't see a problem with that. So
Okay.
but this gets into it's just the Christian nationalist thing. It's very outside the frame of reference where I operate.
Okay. Well, then I'll riff on it just a little bit more.
Please do.
So basically, the end result is you. Like I said, there are only two ways it manifests. It's either I want to have a country that's Christian and to like my country. People, first of all, people seem to mistake the concept of patriotism with nationalism.
Yes, I
It
would say that is true, and I'm an ardent defender of patriotism when it's
me
properly
liking
defined.
me country is not nationalism.
Yeah, I mean I would define patriotism as love of one's nation, and love is defined as wanting the good for the other for the sake of the other. So simply wanting what is good for your community is patriotism, and
Yeah,
so I don't have any beef with patriotism. Nationalism, I don't mind national pride because it sounds like patriotism, but I'm not quite sure how nationalism works when we're so atomized and kind of globalized.
that
I'm
there's
not sure
that
how
too.
nationalism works.
Yeah, there's the fact that it basically wouldn't work as well. I mean, what
Yeah,
is it? Melting of the pot nationalism,
I mean
or
there is
they
no
think
community
that
anymore. Like nationalism only works if there's
there's
a community, and there is no community except for these online communities. We're
e-
decentralized into
exactly.
hubs of internet cultures.
Yeah, and so it ends up either being oh, and then when you try to rebuke them for any reason, if you have a good point to raise and you try to rebuke them, it's oh, but don't you want a Christian country? That's not what nationalism is it? And
Yeah,
then you bring up to them, okay, well, if it's nationalist, then you have these features of forcing people to be Christian at gunpoint, and if you don't, then you get all these detriments, and eventually, as the nationalism increases, you get deported back to some other nation. Um, that is nationalism. And they're like, oh, but we wouldn't do that because that's not Christian. Well, then it's not fucking nationalism, is it? Is it? Like, are you stupid? So there's a certain point where nationalism and Christianity directly conflict with each other. Sure, you might have a few things that you can think of that align between nationalism and Christianity. If you consider your nation to be an extension of your family,
yeah.
and that you're supposed to hold your national ties like you're supposed to hold your familial ties. Okay, fine. That's fine. But you know what else? In the Bible, it's basically stated outright that sometimes the honoring thing to do is to disobey your parents when they're asking you to do evil.
What's that Bible
That's
verse where it's like, you have to love me more than your own parents?
that's exactly what I'm referring to. He
Yeah,
who does not or if you wish to follow me, you must not only hate your own father and mother and brother and sister but also maybe even your own life. That's not saying that you have to hate them. It's that you should be willing to,
yeah.
if that's what it takes.
I'm when it comes to the Christian nationalist thing, I'm with Scott Hahn. He wrote a book called Christians in Exile, where he argues that because our home is the kingdom of God, that's where our home is meant to be, that's where our home is going to be. We are always in exile because we've been exiled from the Garden of Eden,
Yeah.
and so we are always going to be in exile. So we should always upwards if we are in exile. Is more or less the principle of the book, and I would argue that's probably true. That's
Yeah.
most likely true, and so get wins when
Our
you
kingdom
can.
is not of this world.
Exactly. Now like I said earlier, I'm all for um I'm all for
Me like
coachable
you,
and
me country.
I'm all for that, and I'm all for coachable encouragement, even like tax encouragement. I'm not for like the second class citizens kind of thing, but I am of the opinion like you're gonna have a democracy, right?
Yeah.
Let's just imagine a hypothetical scenario. Let's enter a second world. Let's enter into fairyland, as Tolkien would say. Enter into the second world and imagine this scenario. You have a small nation the size of, say, Texas. Not bigger than most. Big, but not huge. That's not to say. Let's say it's something like Florida. And it's a Christian government. It's a Christian democracy. It was founded by Christians for Christians. It's mainly Christians there, and I hope and it's the ordering of that society is towards God, trying to be a just Christian society. I don't see why you would have to say those who are not Christian get a right to vote and how a Christian country operates. So
Yeah,
I don't.
that's fair.
I'm not saying we should have like second class citizens always, but if you are going to be a Christian nation, this also gets into my view of rights, where I'm like rights. So I don't believe in rights. I believe the rights are basically rights are either you have whatever right you can physically enforce.
Wait a
And
second. Wait a second. Wait a second. I thought I thought you're Catholic, so you don't believe in lefts.
um, like
Sorry, I had
so
to.
good. I give an example. I sparked a huge problem at work when the gun debate came up at work the other day. And I made my point where it's like, yeah, no, I think I'm all for people having guns, but only those who politically agree with me should have guns. Why would I want my enemies armed? Like if you're going to be a member of society, you should be a good member of society, meaning you should be personally ordered towards what your society at large is ordered towards the good. If it's not ordered towards the good, you don't want to be a part of that society anyway. You just want to make it to be where it's ordered towards the good. If you're going to be ordered towards bad and always try to disorder society towards the bad, why would I reward you with rights? That's more or less my argument when it comes to rights. About rights are rewards. If you're a good citizen, you should get rights. If you're a bad citizen, you shouldn't get rights.
My position is that your rights are whatever you're physically capable of.
Yes, or whatever someone is physically capable of, or whatever someone is physically capable of defending for you.
That
Um,
too. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I don't believe rights are real. I think that's why I probably get the most Nietzsche, and I'm like, no, if
They're conceptually real.
yes,
They're You know
I have
what? Here
I
we
have a
go.
right
They're
to free
floating
speech.
around they're floating around Plato's world of forms. How about that?
Yes,
Along
I
with the
have a
square circle and the rock so big God can't lift it.
I have a right to say whatever I can say until someone hits me and a fight is begun, and I only can continue to say what I want to say if I win.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's just how the world operates.
Yeah,
Um,
might
but
makes right.
yeah,
Might makes rights.
yes. This make
I
morally
mean, from
right.
an
It is right.
objective perspective, yes, that's true. But I'm not sure if I agree from a moral perspective.
Yeah. My whole might makes right is a difficult phrase and saying because we want to interpret right as morally right. So I prefer to say might is. It's
Might
not
be,
right, but might is.
might be, might do.
Might do.
Okay, let's see here. Next level of sin. So let's get into the actual nature of sin because this is where I really wanted to hit, and this is where the podcast is going to start getting juicy. So, what I was telling you before that sparked you wanting to come on the podcast, and that really it's really been my driving force behind season 2 here is that sin and its nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One moment, let me pull this up here. Hopefully, it still exists. It's on one of my suspended Twitter accounts. Okay.
Before you read your thing, if you found it, I want to say one thing I'm interested in getting into on the nature of sin is golden mean and virtue has the opposite of sin, and not just sin in excess like getting drunk, but sin in the reverse where you're scared of things. That's what I want to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
into. That's why I'm here to see what we agree with disagreements we have, agreements we have on that issue.
I actually have a very quick response for that. Very quick, very simple. There are some activities where we are supposed to take the most extreme stance in some direction,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some activities where we are supposed to strike a balance between a certain stance.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, there is letter of the law, spirit of the law, and not following the law at all.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the following the letter of the law can be the opposite of not following the spirit, or can be
Mm-hmm.
the opposite of breaking the law or not following the law. They can be opposites, but it seems that striking a balance between them is what following the spirit of the law is.
Yeah, the golden mean, as Aristotle would say.
Yeah.
The example I give on that is courage, where it's like, is it a sin to be a coward? I would say in most, like, if your family's in danger and you're gonna run the other direction and not be a man and be a father and stand up and protect your family, I would say that's pretty. I would say that's sinful. But also, if you're gonna be a foolhardy idiot and just rush headlong into danger, borderline suicidal, I'd say that's also kind of sinful. So
Yes.
there's a golden mean of virtue where either extreme will result with you being in sin.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the same thing I'm saying.
Yes.
But then there's other times where you want to be as extreme towards a certain good as possible.
Yes, like we should love God with all of our hearts. It's the good that we
Exactly.
should be seeking.
Or you should uncompromisingly do what is most honoring to your father and mother.
Mm-hmm.
Where the letter of the law comes in. Actually, maybe I should rephrase it this way. It's not a balance. It's that when you try following something so hard that you end up skewing off in a different direction, that's letter of the law.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get Jews who say that we don't want to cause extra work, extra stress on the
Mm-hmm.
electrical system, so therefore our job is to not alter electricity.
Or
And
no,
so we make these lights that actually tax the electric system more
the Sabbath
by
lights.
keeping on all day. And you just turn a thing and they brighten
You
up the
slide it
room.
up and the light's always on. Just slide up to let's be seen.
That's more work because you have your electricity on all day.
Mm-hmm. Or
But it's the
let
same sort of thing.
let the law
Um,
taking all the sins from the community and putting them onto its second.
yeah. See, exactly,
I would say
exactly.
I remember I saw something on 4chan
Yay,
or
we
something.
tricked God.
Yeah, I saw it on 4chan. It was like, don't worry, guys, the second's underground. God can't see us. It's like, what kind of mindset is this? Mm,
So bringing this back to my essay
mm,
or pamphlet, I'm still not sure how it's going to be. um I'll read this one passage. You've heard this already.
mhm,
I am the nature of the Antichrist. I am the abomination of desolation who falsely sits on the throne, even though I know it's the Father's. My sin, myself, and my desire are the anti Trinity, the being who is the Antichrist. So, as the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father, and the Son loves the Father, so too does my desire proceed from me, and I love my own sin. And therefore I consume myself and what little of God's image I have left, and I send more of my own desire to shape the world in my own vain self image. In my opinion, what I've written here is the root of what sin really is,
mm,
because I'm trying to identify the what sin does to the rest of human nature. There's the
mhm,
image of God, which we're supposed to be following, and then there's the broken image of God, which is what we end up following
mm,
when we sin. And so we are, man, I wish I had the image, because it's on a deleted Twitter account,
mm.
or not deleted, a suspended Twitter account. I have to find it on my phone real quick. There it is. So the sin consumes the body or the ego.
Mhm.
Sin sends desire and spirit. and the desire demands the sin, and the body falls to the sin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the relationship that the sin nature has with everything else. And I think that
It privates everything else.
exactly, it
Mm-hmm.
privates all the good, literally everything else, and the spirit desires it, and the body falls to it.
I would say this is actually almost perfectly in line with Genesis, where God says the moment you eat this fruit, you will surely die, and they don't die
Yeah,
immediately. It's that we have now death has now entered into the world because we have been separated from the holiness that is God, so we are now lacking something, which we're trying to get fulfilled through baptism, so we can speak. So it's not like our fallenness is a lack. We are lacking the original holiness of Adam and Eve.
yes, exactly. And so when we fall to our sin, our sins send more desire to tempt us, and therefore we lust after our desires, and that demands that we sin, and then in turn the sin consumes us and deepens our lusts and our desires, and that is how we fall.
Mm-hmm.
Is that our desire, it plays off itself into a big cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and the more you play into the cycle, the more it deepens itself. So um this is how someone goes from, like, they look at Sports Illustrated in Walmart, and that's their kick. That's how they go from that to looking at porn, and then some of that crazy porn, and then like paraphiliac porn, where
Mm-hmm.
they're looking at like kids or animals or something else, or gore. This is the desires continuing towards an infinite progression towards one specific sin. The more you play into a specific sin, the more the desire for that specific sin deepens. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's what the Bible is talking about when God, quote unquote, leaves us to our sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
You've rejected us, and you've rejected me and my perfection so much, God says, that I'm just going to let you die to your desires, because
yeah.
just rejected me that hard.
I mean, it gets into the point where it's like, depart from me, for I do not know you. Um,
Exactly.
and again, I think it's like one of the things that blew my mind when I was really first getting into studying theology was this idea that God does not damn us to hell, but we choose hell by we choose hell by choosing not to follow God, by choosing our own sins.
Yeah. And he
And
loves
so
us
it's
enough to let us go where we want to go.
yes, which is a whew, when you first hear that, even when I hear it now, I'm just like, that's a it's a paradigm changing realization that
Yeah.
once that hits, you're like, okay, so many other things make sense.
Mm-hmm.
um so I just need a minute to kind of like recollect my thoughts after hearing that again. When it comes to studying the nature of sin, I think you can't look. When it comes to studying the nature of sin, the best place to look is Genesis. um
Mm-hmm.
and have you ever read any Scott Hahn by any chance, or listened to any of them? He's
I
a
have not.
okay, he's a
I don't
very,
think so.
very good theologian. He was a Presbyterian before he became Catholic. Very good theologian, actually incredible public speaker because he speaks with a Presbyterian pastor style. Um, he wrote a book called "Holy Is His Name," where I didn't understand original sin as a concept until I understood holiness as a concept, and the what we have lost and being cast out of the garden, and the it's not so it's not how do I put this. There's the view of original sin that we are all natural, inbred, born to sin, and I don't think that's wrong. I think the proper view of it is just. I'm trying to phrase this very precisely, so work with me as I work this out. The holiness that Adam and Eve had being present in the garden that was then lost to them when they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil and were cast out of the garden, is that because they were cast out, their descendants have been cast out. And since we're all descended from them, we have also been casted out. So it's the lack of the holiness that we were meant to have in our heavenly,
Yes.
in our perfected form or perfected nature, is what we're all lacking. So it's not that we are and born with this it's not that we are born with this positive desire towards sin. Is that because we lack something, we have this positive desire towards sin? What I think
Yes.
reinforces the idea of sin is privation, and being has goodness. Bad what is bad is not have what is evil is purely lacking. It's pure privation.
Or maybe it's something more like, instead of us, like, we have the desire towards it because we don't have the disgust towards it that we should have.
Yes, we lack the knowledge of holiness that were meant to have, and because of that lack
Yes.
of knowledge, we don't understand the gravity of the sins. I
Yes,
think yeah,
exactly.
I think that's a good way to put that. I still need to finish his book on holiness. It's very good, but he has a tendency to. He's a very great writer and can be very great at popular level. But when he wants to get dense, he can get dense for as a theologian. And that book has a few chapters where I think he gets really like academically dense, and I'm like, I am struggling here to understand this part. But no, he's a great writer that you can get it, but you have to like reread it a few times, and you have to kind of put it down, just marinate on the ideas of what he's saying because it's so profound.
I mean, I feel like I've heard him before, but obviously not to like a significant degree. I have issues remembering names.
Mm.
I'd probably forget my own name if it wasn't written on my ID.
Well, it's not hard. It's easy to. He's pretty much everywhere because he's written like 70 something books, and
Hmm.
he's only like 60 something years old. He's written more books than years he's been around for. Um,
Dang.
and they're all. I don't think it's a bad one. They're all phenomenal. Even his academic works. I have he wrote a book called "Politicizing the Bible: The History of the Bible as a Tool of Political Statecraft," where he goes through like different kings and governments' interpretation of Bibles and court hired or court appointed theologians to interpret and translate things to justify more political gain.
Huh.
Very good book.
Interesting. I'll have to
Um,
check that out.
it's big. It's also only part one. Part one only covers from like year 500 to 1500, and the second half dealing with post Reformation.
Did you see what's his name? Um One moment. Let me look it up before I dive in on this, cuz this dude made a book recently. This is a little bit of a tangent. This is more based off of, authors. But
Mm-hmm.
this dude made a book recently where he took something like 40 years of his life researching the subject of the evidence for the resurrection. We're talking, this is some, whew. Let me see if I can find it. I know I saved it into a YouTube playlist.
Well, man, this is some great radio.
Oh, 50,
um,
50 years. 50 years
whew,
studying nothing but the resurrection.
that's a long
Sean
time to study
McDowell
something.
interviewed him. Gary Habermas. Gary Habermas,
Habermas?
PhD.
Gary
Yeah,
Habermas?
Habermas.
Is he related to
Yeah.
Jürgen Habermas? Oh,
I
I
don't
gotta look this
know.
up. It's
He might
Gary.
be.
Because that'd be insane if that was the case. Hold on, Gary. How is spelled? How is it spelled? How is Habermas?
Habermas.
That is the same spelling. Okay, I doubt he's related, but it would be. I have to look it up now because I'll look it up while you continue to talk about what your point you want to make.
So there are 2 volumes, 1,072 pages. Uh-oh. My camera turned off. Uh-oh.
No.
That's no bueno. I fixed that. um
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's related to Jürgen Habermas, but it is why that he has the same name.
Weird. Start virtual camera. I hope it doesn't start suddenly showing my actual face. No, there we go. Okay, good. I like my anonymity.
I'm
Anyway,
indifferent when it
yeah,
comes to the anonymity, but go ahead.
thank you for not being Jordan Peterson. um
That's got to be his
I'm
cringe's
full.
take.
That definitely is one of his most cringe takes. if not his most cringe.
Yeah.
Like, come on. I mean, he seems to be okay when people quote unquote need anonymity
Hmm.
in like a sort of like a state cuck.
Hmm.
What is it? What's the old adage? If you have nothing to hide, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to
Nothing to
hide.
hide.
Like, come on.
When it comes to Peterson, I don't listen to him much anymore. Um, and no matter how cringe he gets or what weird thing he does, he falls into that weird camp of thinkers for me, who have said has like if you're a philosopher or any kind of intellectual, you can have one incredibly awesome line, and I will ignore a lot of your mistakes because of that one line. And for Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson, his line was like, "Do you think strong men are or how do you put it? Do you think strong men are dangerous? Wait do you see what weak men are capable of?"
Oh yeah,
It's just such a
absolutely.
fantastic line. No matter what he does now, I'm like he gets a pass on a lot of stuff because that is such a wonderfully said and wonderful line that he gets a pass.
Yeah, it's some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good author. He's a good
Yes.
writer. He's good at speaking and writing. He's good at
Mm-hmm.
debates too,
Mm-hmm.
because he's really good at in debates. He's really good at heading off an argument before it gets started.
Yes.
Like you thought you had this whole fully blown argument, this whole well thought out top tier argument, and then all of a sudden Jordan Peterson is like, yeah, well, in the beginning here you made this little mistake, so maybe rethink your position, bucko.
I just
It, yeah, he's got his own issues though, unfortunately it doesn't
mm,
help him.
yeah. Um yeah. I think eventually he'll end up converting because his wife converted to Catholicism, and so I like to think that he'll follow suit. Um, but it's gonna be really funny if he becomes Orthodox and he stays Catholic.
Yeah,
So I think that'd just be really funny. But
well, he
um,
said his problem with Orthodox was it was too boring. That then again, that was just the liturgy, so maybe
yeah, I've never experienced an Orthodox liturgy. There
me
is a
either.
there's an Orthodox parish nearby where I live, but it's a double wide trailer. Um, so I call it trailer park orthodoxy. Um, and I bet you the priest is super cool because he knows he's in a trailer park. And being the white trash Socrates that I am, I want to talk to this guy so bad. I want to just walk up the trailer park Orthodox priest. Let's have a conversation, please. Let me interview. I bring the mic. Let me interview you in person. I will not argue anything. I just want to ask questions like Socrates. Let me ask some questions, please, because I would love to talk to him. I saw like a I don't know if they call him
That's
homilies or
funny.
not, but I saw a homily he gave on YouTube, and I'm like, he's a big beard, he's a big guy, he's got a good laugh. I bet he seems like a very jovial person, and he just seems like a fun guy. This is from the YouTube video I saw, and I want to meet him.
Yeah, those Orthodox bros are pretty. They usually got the big beards.
They do. I am so when it
They
comes to the
usually do.
Orthodox, this is probably gonna be my hottest Orthodox take on them. Is that I don't like that's not true. I like very few of the converts and lay people, but I love almost all of the priests.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's common.
Yes.
Um, like nobody likes Ortho bros.
Yeah.
Everyone loves Orthodox. Everyone hates Ortho bros.
Yes. I saw a TikTok today when the guy was ranking denominations, and he went Orthodox. I love you, but I refuse to listen to any of the Ortho bros who've never stepped foot into a church.
Yeah,
And that
exactly,
seems to be apparently
exactly.
it's a common saying because it's not enough Orthodox churches in America that when like new Orthodox converts are like asking these Ortho bros like where do I go for church, they send like YouTube links to homilies and say listen to this. There's no good churches in your area. Or they say, well, that's a good one. That's the Greek one, so you can't go there. Or that's a Western, so you can't go there. They seem very divided, and so they seem content to listen to YouTube videos and never actually attend. Like the amount of also bros who aren't even baptized and confirmed or even started catechesis but argue for it is like that's a weird saying that I don't think any Orthodox priest would approve of, or any
Yeah,
actual
definitely.
Orthodox person would approve of. Um, I honestly I do feel for them. You know, like being in the South in Florida, my options for churches are not super big.
Yeah.
But I'm very fortunate I found a great one. You're gonna find it funny, honestly. So I was so I was reading into Catholicism, thinking about conversion, reading into it some more, and I was at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure I need to convert because I'm accepting all of the doctrines and arguments. I'm not so win yet. It's kind of like that hesitancy when you're like you know you
Hmm.
need something to be like, I don't want to do it yet because it's gonna be awkward with my family. And then I was in a Sunday night service, and my Protestant pastor got up and said, "You don't need to say in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit when you baptize somebody." And I walked out. So I walked out. I
Yeah,
got on my phone, Google Catholic churches. Yes,
that
it,
directly violates Jesus's word.
I know. I was a little shocked because he's normally the
Literally
priest.
baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
It's one of the few things we are absolutely unambiguously no denomination or sect
Hmm.
or anything that should call itself Christian should be denying that
Yeah,
at all.
it was so shocking because he's great on like so many things, and I still like him. But it's just that one issue came up, and I'm like, I'm out. I walked out of the church. I got on my phone and typed in Catholic churches near me, and what came up was St. Thomas Aquinas Sabato.
Ah.
And I'm like, this is so perfect that I think this is a sign that I have to go. So I immediately emailed him, like, I want to join. How do I join? I met with the priest like the next day. Super old Polish guy. Phenomenal. Just phenomenal person. Love him to death.
That's awesome.
Mm.
I still don't think I've found a church home.
Mm.
Um, I respect a lot of Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy and Eastern Catholicism
Mm.
and Syrian Church of the East. I even have some decent respect for Coptics and for
Mm.
Presbyterians and for Baptists. And there's so many things where it's like at one point I definitely think that the Baptists have the right view here, but then I think that the Catholics have the right view there, and the
Mm.
Orthodox have the right view here. And it's and that this is why I've come to this sort of conclusion where like we're all really trying to say the same thing, and we just have different definitions that lead us towards a certain direction.
Mm.
And that as long as you're affirming the Bible and basically all of the Nicene Creed, maybe
Mm.
not as it was written.
Mm. Well,
uh
not to try to convert you or argue you into anything. I don't want to try that. I just have a question that if you're at that point where you're thinking a lot of them have a very similar understanding of truth, why not just go? And there's many different interpretations of history. Why not just look like historically search for the window when they were the most correct? You know, like
I
why
don't
not
think
try to
there's
do
one that's the most correct.
okay,
And if I did, it would probably be closest to Syrian Church of the East.
okay. I was just curious. Like I think a lot of people kind of get to
You
that
can tell
point.
I'm a big Sam Shamoon fan.
I was curious. A lot of people seem to get to that point, and they seem to
Yeah.
just go into well, if I can't figure out these issues here, I'll go historical, and then they switch from theology to history.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that. I was just kind of curious what your view on that was.
Basically it ends up being that I don't think that any one of them has the correct view.
Mm.
And I do believe that history changes things in
Mm.
ways that are not quite appropriate,
Mm.
or things become dogmas that shouldn't become dogmas.
Mm.
And to me, that goes all the way back to Genesis. That's why with that thing I was telling you about before in Genesis, with the
Mm.
Adam and Eve's mistake before the first sin.
Mm.
It ends up becoming one of those where it's more like I have I agree with the complaints of too many different sides
Mm.
that contradict one another to accept one. That's why,
Okay.
honestly, I want to create a subs. I don't want to create it. I just want to see a proper definition of Christian subsume all the different minor
Mm.
differentiations. Because for my money, Catholics don't really believe that much different from Protestants or Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
isn't
the
there that
vast.
multi-faced declaration that was made in like 2016 that Presbyterians Lutherans and Anglicans and Catholics have all signed on to.
Yeah, something like that, but more even broader, because I think that there's a position for. Okay, so for example, there's credo baptism, and then there's paedo baptism.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in credo familial baptism, which is a child can be baptized as part of a family, but the whole family should be getting baptized when that happens,
Mm.
and that it's when you get a baptism that's not a believer's baptism, that's more of an entrance into the church baptism. Basically, I think everyone's interpretation is basically correct, and that they are all. I guess you could call me an extreme compatibilist as far as what we define each of these things as, because like even in Catholicism and Orthodoxy, there's confirmation and prismation, which is like, oh, we want to make sure the baptism took,
Mm.
more or less. I know it's not technically
Yeah.
that, but it might as well be.
Mm.
Like, well, he got baptized when he was 8 days old, but we want to make sure it took. We want to make sure the
Yeah.
baptism stuck. So we have this ritual we do. Like, okay,
Mm.
well, that's basically symbolically extending the original baptism to the moment of prismation or of confirmation.
I mean, I would phrase it in the sense that you were baptized to receive graces that could be beneficial. And then you have the catechism, which is the education, and you have the full confirmation to member of the church.
Ooh, watch out! There's a Lutheran behind you.
Oh, honestly, when it comes to these doctrinal differences, I when I first converted, I was really big into apologetics and wanting to hash out all these differences. But maybe in my seasoned old age of 25, I prefer just to like, the way I want to put it is like I am too poor of a Christian to try to do this right now. Like I think it was I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a Catholic philosopher in France who was a student of Jacques Derrida. So he was like a postmodern Catholic.
Oh.
I know, very weird, but he actually is phenomenal. And he had this line where he goes, I am a Christian because I'm trying to be a Christian, and the church exists as a machine to wash sinners into saints. And that's where I'm kind of at, I think, where it's like, no, I would prefer just to study the theology and fully round out all my understandings of things. And then if someone has a question, I will answer it. If I hear a falsehood, I will push back on it. But seeking out confrontation for the sake of trying to argue, it's not who I am anymore. Not where I'm at. Unless it's political, in which case I will wage war against all the transgenders.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not
First season was 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
This season has extended to 1.5 to 2 hours.
Okay. I was just curious.
Good stuff.
I mean, I'm down to go for, however long you want to go for. I just had a Red Bull. I'm full of energy. I got a vape.
I'm doing what I always do in Minecraft or really I'm doing what I always do when I'm talking to somebody long term. I get on Minecraft and I jump on my chests. I have a chest room and I just run around in circles and jump on the chests.
There's something about having a task at hand that's simple that you can kind of just like relax your mind and make it easier to have a conversation. For me, that's smoking. For me, it's the same debate in between. On the nature of sin. This is what we were talking about. Man, I'm very guilty of this.
Is tobacco a sin? Dun dun dun.
It's not a sin, but Lord forgive me for I've sinned.
Oh, really? If it's not a sin, why do they spell Zin like that?
I am very guilty of this. When I go on someone else's podcast, I am a master of the tangents, constantly bringing up tangents, and we'll just get on random topics. So I'm like, oh yeah, I feel as a host, as a podcast host who's now down to guest on else's podcast, and I've completely derailed it. I feel it's now my duty to try to pull it back in. So I end up trying to take over from the host. And I was like, I'm not trying to take over here, but I've derailed it. Let me get us back on track. Ugh,
The I'll touch on my tobacco use. I basically just rarely
mm,
use any form of tobacco at all,
mm,
and I if I do use tobacco, I'm going to be having like one cigar every week.
mm,
Nicotine doesn't affect me very much in my head, and I
mm,
don't really like smoking itself.
mm,
So uh basically I if I do it more than X amount of X amount so often,
mm,
uh I'll put it this way. I get sick to my stomach on nicotine before I start feeling a buzz at all.
mm. Okay. For
Yeah.
me, cigarettes remind me that God loves us, because only a merciful and good God can create tobacco. And this is a if you ever see me in public, before I light any cigarette, I say, "Thank you, Lord, for the cigarette," and I smoke it. Because every
That's
cigarette to me
funny.
truly is a reminder that only a merciful and good God who loves us could create something as awesome as tobacco.
That's funny because that's what I basically used to do with marijuana.
I okay, so when it comes to marijuana, this is my retake. Okay, it is
Retake.
my
Okay. All
read
right.
take is this: it is
Oh,
not a
okay.
sin to do it occasionally and in communal settings. So for me, it's like if you're going to be a wake and bake or just use it to excess or an abuse, or you can't get through a day without it and you rely on it, that's when I say it encroaches into a sin territory. But if you're at a
Definitely.
party and someone has on like a nature documentary, like about turtles, and they're passing a bong around, there's a communal aspect there that I think is good. And that in the same way
Interesting.
in the same way booze could work as a social lubricant, I think weed could work as a social um uplifting. Like,
Lubricant.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I'll say one thing great about weed is this generation. Because I don't know how old you are, but I'm Gen Z. Um, Gen Z will get high and love to talk philosophy. Like, I had a great conversation. I was at a friend's house. We were passing a bong, and the atheist was an atheist chick there, and she said, "I just converted my boyfriend to an atheist." And I yelled, because he was in the other room, I yelled, "Oh ass! Let me talk to you for 5 minutes, and I'll fix that."
That's funny.
And she immediately tried to argue with me about it. Well, when I tried to explain St. Thomas Aquinas' first way, the unmoved mover, and she got into like, well, why couldn't it be multiple unmoved movers? So I got to explain St. Thomas's argument how it can't be a pantheistic unmoved mover, because then it would be composed of parts, and one would have what the other one lacked. Otherwise, there would be a
Yeah.
unity. And so I got to have this really great in-depth conversation. And out of nowhere, the other guy just went, "What do you think the nature of sin is?" And I'm like, "I'm glad you asked." And so you get to have these like fun conversations with people who would normally
Never.
I haven't figured out a term for this yet, but it's like the everyone's got an opinion mentality where they're perfectly fine to just never actually have the conversation and agree to disagree. And like
Hmm.
that mentality is very strong nowadays. And this is actually why I'm in favor of bullying. Um, let me explain. Let me explain. So I got into this with a friend of mine. He was complaining about the Christ is Lord people on Twitter. And he goes, "Christ is Lord, but if you're saying this to piss people off, it's not good." And I said, "I will agree, but also, so many people don't want to have a conversation, and they're happy to say agree to disagree. But if I mock you and you get angry enough that you want to engage and not back away, I am now you are now actually in a conversation where you have your ideas on the line, where you're willing to have your ideas tested, and that's
Yeah.
good. And so, is it bad to bully people? Sometimes, but also if I can bully, like, I have a coworker. He identifies as a pansexual femboy. I know, but no one told him that was gross in his entire life. He said I was like the first person to ever tell him that was gross and wrong, and because I mocked him for it and bullied him for it, he actually engaged in the conversation. And now he's thinking of coming to church with me next week, like he's considering
That's
going to
awesome.
mass. So, but if I didn't bully him, you would never would have had that conversation, you know.
Yeah.
And so
And,
there's a virtue
if you're
to
not
that.
actually being a dick about it, it's not really bullying in
Yeah,
the way that most people
I
think
probably was
bullying
being a dick
is.
though, but that's my own vice and problem. The
Okay, so
Go ahead,
I'll tell you my take on marijuana real quick.
please do.
I actually have a more pietist
Mm-hmm.
and less social view on marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So, having been extremely experienced in it, and I actually think it should be being used for objective self-analysis
Mm.
is where the it should be used as a tool, not
Mm-hmm.
just a social tool, but as a tool to let you see your own thoughts from another perspective.
Mm.
So in this example, I was, man, how do I even put this into words without sounding like a little bitch? We all have regrets,
Mm-hmm.
right? We all have things about ourselves that we hate, we don't like, and things that, well, okay, we'll go back to Jordan Peterson on this one.
Mm-hmm.
He has this great phrase that I love, and that phrase is twisting the fabric of reality.
Mm-hmm.
You can only twist the fabric of reality for so far or for so long before reality snaps back at you.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses the example of literally twisting fabric and then following the wrinkles. Like you
Mm.
start from where a wrinkle's starting, and you're like, how did this happen? And then you follow the wrinkle back, and you're like, oh, there was this. And then there was this, and then there was this, and you're getting closer and closer to where you twisted the fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back to the where you twisted the fabric, and you're like, oh, this. It all started with this bullshit you did.
Mm-hmm.
It's that. That is one of the things that marijuana can help you see about your own actions.
It forces you into a different frame of mind.
Yes, and that different frame of mind comes from, ironically, the paranoia. So the thing that most people try to avoid. I got this from actually being an old psychonaut back in, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Psychonaut?
I don't know what that is.
Somebody who wants to explore the mind using mind-altering substances.
Okay, I knew that was a thing. I just didn't know it was called that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Psychonaut.
So
that's actually like astronaut, but for the psyche.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually a banger name.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
That goes hard.
It's also the name of a game.
I'm now imagining like a bunch of potheads walking out in slow motion to a spaceship, but it's shaped like a bomb.
So basically, there was a old psychonaut named Terrence McKenna. You may or may not have heard this name before, but he was popularized by making the guide for growing mushrooms in a mason jar in your house.
Okay.
That's how he became super popular in the psychonaut community. And what he ended up doing is he ended up becoming a pretty popular speaker. And he said the real danger doesn't lie in doing too much. It lies in doing too little. There's this area where you do too little and you're just sort of in this party mode.
You're getting all the benefits and the negatives, and sometimes you need the negatives. It's like going to the gym and only lifting 5-pound weights because you don't want to get sore.
So in my own personal thoughts, I moved it back, and I was like, okay, I don't agree with everything he said, because I was still a good bit of a Christian at the time. I still believed in God, at least. And I thought back, and I'm like, well, when people ended up actually tripping balls from things in real life back in the olden times when these things were being first discovered, how did it happen? Well, it would be some guy would be walking along in the forest, and he would be starving to death, and he'd be so desperate that he would just grab whatever mushrooms look edible. Try not to grab toadstools, but we're gonna get some mushrooms, we're gonna eat them. And then all of a sudden, an hour or 2 hours later, he's sitting there crying as he has a personal conversation with the divine.
Yeah.
That or you'd be eating bread, and you'd be the unlucky sap to get the ergot bread. And then all of a sudden you're having an LSD trip and dying. Maybe you'd survive. You'd probably die. However the hell the shamans discovered ayahuasca in the Amazon. Probably pretty similar thing. We're just like, well, we need some sort of calories, and we have this plant that's used for medicine from here, and we have this plant in front of us we use for food from here. maybe if we combine them, it'll be delicious. And then they combine it and they try using vinegar to give themselves some extra energy.
Hmm.
And boom, all of a sudden you're talking to the divine. And so these things combined together, it seems, to make a uh,
What's the issue?
one sec. I died in Minecraft suddenly. That was weird.
Yeah. I've only done mushrooms once. I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast before. My mushroom store. I was in DC with a few friends, and sorry, they don't sell mushrooms because that's illegal. They sell posters and give you mushrooms with the posters,
Oh, there you go.
which is
Yeah.
of course they only had Rick and Morty posters, but I saw it's very ironic and kind of hilarious. um,
That's funny.
and of course, like any newbie when he does any new drug, you take one and go, I'm not feeling it. Let me take a second one. So we all end up taking two. Except for the one guy who agreed, like he doesn't do it. He's very Puritan for He's like, I don't do anything, so he's just gonna watch and make sure we're okay. So we take two, and then we read the box. It goes, warning, delayed reaction. Don't take two, kind of thing on the box, and we're like, shit. But
Hmm.
it was a really incredible experience because it felt like I was more locked into my own thought processes. I so if you notice on this podcast when I'm talking, there's a lot of pauses for me to think of what to say next. There was none of that. It was pure peak brain proficiency. Um, I had
Hmm.
probably the
Yeah.
greatest, one of the greatest. My friend was an atheist, and so we probably had the greatest like atheist Christian conference I've ever had in my life during that moment. Um, it was incredible, but also I'm pretty sure I hallucinated a demon or I saw a demon.
Yep, that can happen.
I walked outside to hit my vape because I couldn't smoke in the guy's house. And so I hit my vape. So I'm in a pitch black garage. I hit my vape, and if you know, vapes have like a little light indicator on, and then you know they're working. So I hit the vape, it's glowing, and I blow the vape out, and it's still glowing. And I saw the vape smoke part over like a mask, where I saw eye holes and a mouse, but I saw it part around the face. And my first thought process was, okay, I'm looking into the abyss. So I stared there for a minute, staring into this smoke face staring back at me. I just went, pussy, and walked back inside. And I walked in and stood there in this kitchen for like apparently I thought it was only like 30 seconds, but apparently I stood in the kitchen motionless for so long. My friend was like, Caleb, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna sit down now. And I sat down, just kind of I zoned out for another hour apparently. But so I'm not a big fan of psychedelics. I think psychedelics are too easily abused, especially in today's
Yeah.
when the market. My biggest problem today with it is that they've been commercialized to where they're way stronger than they should be. You
Yes.
know, like
And like I
weed
said,
in the
or
80s was
like
different.
Terrence McKenna says, the danger does not lie in doing too few or in doing too much. It lies in not doing enough.
Yeah. Um.
Because the old adage is this: there are no bad trips.
Mm,
Like you may have a tough trip, it
mm,
may be difficult or emotionally painful or whatever,
mm.
but there's no actual bad
Yeah,
trip.
I've never had a trip, but I've always kind of assumed that. And I've always kind of I never had a justification for assuming that there are no bad trips. But to me, I'm a big believer in divine providence.
Oh yeah.
And so I like to think that even when we make mistakes, like even when Jonah ran from God, the 3 days in the whale being a precursor typology to Christ's 3 days in hell after the cross.
Mm-hmm.
Even Jonah ran from God and chose to do that. God's used that as an example for a type for later in the Bible, and so the divine providence is always at play.
Always. Yes it is.
Hmm.
Yes it is.
I feel
Um
like I should also mention that if any view I've expressed on drugs violates or goes against any paper document on drugs, don't listen to me. I'm an idiot. Refer to the Pope. I am very cautious to say I don't want to. I am very careful normally, but if I say anything that violates any paper teachings, I'm a podcaster. Don't come to me for this. If you get your theology from me, I am a podcaster. I'm a 25-year-old podcaster in Florida. I survey for a living. I am not a theologian or a philosopher. I might be a philosopher, but I don't want to using that word.
you survey in a woods, right?
I do.
It seems like that's awesome.
Yeah, dude,
How do you like your job?
I I like my job. I don't like my coworkers, and that's why I'm moving.
Many such
Um,
cases.
I actually don't. I don't mind the. I'm good. I don't love surveying because there's just too many variables. Where some days it's like, okay, we're doing an as-built, where it's a giant swamp, and they want to know how the depths of the water in different areas. So I got to walk through the swamp, which over
Mm,
goes above my head. But in some days it's like, okay, there's a property corner a mile and a half into the woods, walk to it, and you come across like this giant creek you can't cross. So you have to find the down tree and climb the trees across and ferry the equipment across, and you have a whole little adventure in the woods. Or
that sounds
you
so
know,
cool.
yeah, like, when a job is good, it is the most fun job in the world. I'm basically a treasure hunter. I have a map and a metal detector. I try to find stuff in the woods. But at the worst days, you're dealing with construction workers setting 250 stakes into the ground and getting elevation on each of them, only for the construction workers to knock them out the next day and you have to do it all over again. So the job has great highs and incredibly frustrating lows. This is why I'm trying to get out of it.
Average construction worker experience.
Yes, I can't. I have more beef with construction workers than probably anybody alive. Um, like I see them in the field. Like I was saying to Laz, and I go to the boss, is this good? And the construction worker was mad because we were telling him he did his job wrong. And he kicked my
Oh
Laz
no.
out and said it's not fucking good. And he kicked my Laz out. I was ready to start swinging. I mean, I stood up,
Yeah.
I had my fist raised, he turned to me, put his fist up, and the coworker stepped up and goes, oh no, we're not gonna do this right now. I'm like, I'm gonna beat his ass. He knocked out my Laz. um, but there's all many great parts of surveying, but there's also so many days where you're just like, yeah, I'm waist deep, I'm nipple deep in a swamp, holding equipment above my head, and I hear a gator. You know,
Yeah.
but also you have the treasure hunting days where you have the most fun, or days where all you're doing is driving. You know,
They got leeches in Florida?
no, I don't think so.
Thank God.
Yeah, we have ticks, which is another problem, but
Ticks are easier to deal with than leeches.
yeah,
You can feel a tick.
yeah, um,
Leeches, ugh.
yeah. Leeches freak me out. But I'm hoping to survey in Alaska. I'm moving up there in a few weeks, so I'm
Ooh,
hoping to
that's
get.
a big change for you.
It is. It is. I'm very excited. When I'm driving up there, cross country road trip. It's going to be great. And I'm going to try to get into surveying for the oil fields up there.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, Alaska's wonderful.
I've heard.
I've only been once.
The reason I chose Alaska is probably the dumbest. I chose it for two reasons. I have two friends who live up there, and I've always wanted to see the Northern Lights.
Oh yeah,
That's the
I
main
didn't
reason
get
I'm
to
going
see
up
the
there.
Northern Lights there.
That's
I got to see them in Ohio,
in Ohio.
which
Nice.
Ohio is the inland Florida.
Given the memes about Ohio, makes sense.
Yeah, my uncle lives up there,
Nice.
and when I was a little kid, we went there, and it was during the middle of the day in like the afternoon, and it was cloud coverage, but it was a high cloud coverage, so you were just barely able to make out the northern lights through the clouds, but you could. It's pretty cool.
Mm.
I would love to see them at night. I want to visit like northern Alaska
There's
or
a
Antarctica or something.
in Fairbanks. There's a hiking trail you can take. It's like a resort and a hiking trail. It takes you to a peak where it's like a perfect spot to see the Northern Lights. And inside the resort, they have hot springs. I'm like,
It's
imagine
awesome.
going to a hike, seeing the Northern Lights, and then hopping in a hot spring just to think about it. Sounds like a
Oh yeah,
beautiful vacation.
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Same with like going to Japan or something.
Mm.
Same sort of idea, like because they've got some crazy hot springs in Japan.
Mm. If you could visit, well, this would be a fun little tangent. What countries would you most want to visit for the history and then for their natural aesthetic, like the nature of it?
Natural aesthetic, Japan.
Mm-hmm. Good one.
For history, Greece.
Mm. Mm. Good pick.
My dad went to Greece, and he said it was one of the most amazing things of all time because he said that you can sit there and you can imagine like going to the Acropolis
Mm.
and just imagine watching philosophers debate each other.
The dream. The dream.
That
I have to
that
be
sounds amazing.
careful when I replay those dialogues because I start to get too wanderlust. I start to get too lost in the second word of history where I'm just like, God, and I start to get like resentful that the conversations I get to have on a daily basis are nowhere near as fun or cool.
I was born in the wrong
Yes,
generation.
I was meant to be a Greek slave who overheard cool conversations. That's what I was meant to be.
And then the Greek slave you end up actually being is that one Italian 16-year-old girl that everyone talks about
The Greek
being a
slave
cowboy.
cowboy. If I was to visit any country for like its history, it's going to be Rome. It's going to specifically it's going to be like anywhere in Italy, probably the Vatican or Assisi, where Saint Francis was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for natural aesthetic, either Norway
Mm.
or I think it's Malta. Yeah, it's Malta. I mean,
Malta is absolutely gorgeous,
I've
from
heard
my
I've
understanding.
heard great things, and it sounds awesome. But yeah, this.
If I were to give myself a second for the aesthetic, I've already been there, but like if we're talking like I would move there,
Mm,
the Faroe Islands.
mm,
I don't know if you even know what those are.
I'm vaguely aware.
Okay, so if you follow the line of Scotland,
Mm,
like the very tip of Scotland, directly north
mm-hmm.
until it's level with the most western edge of the Baltics, that's basically a perfect intersection with the Faroe Islands.
Mm,
Um, there's a place there called, I believe it's called Svorvigsvatn, if I remember right, or maybe that's the name of a city. I'll just look it up.
okay.
No, Svorvigsvatn. It's a lake that is right next to a cliff that drains directly into the sea. My gosh, dude! If I could move anywhere in the world, no issue of like
Oh,
people being weird.
I'm seeing images now, and oh my god, that is beautiful.
Yeah, seriously. Isn't
And
that
that wasn't
insane how
blasphemy.
beautiful
That
that
wasn't
is?
taking the Lord's name in vain. It was a thankful prayer to God for making such beautiful stuff.
Yeah,
And I have
exactly.
to specify
It was
that
a
for some people.
genuine thank you, God, for making this exist and be a
Yes.
thing.
Yes. Whoa, I'm looking at these houses with the river running through it. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
Yes. The whole country is like that.
Wow.
That's the populated parts.
I feel like we should have a sword fight along the edge of this cliff face.
Yes, exactly. Loser gets thrown off. It's
Happily.
beautiful.
Happily dive off of that one. Oh. I don't know if my blade and sorcery VR skills would translate well. They probably won't, but I got a shot.
I'm not following your LARP rules if you throw blue tennis balls at me and scream lightning bolts. Sorry. I'm Hema, not LARP.
Lightning bolt pulls out a taser.
Yeah. I think there's like a some sort of modern shooter player who does that. It's his shtick.
Wow, this place is gorgeous.
Yeah, that's where my heritage is from, by the way.
Nice.
Faroese is what they call it.
I have no clue about my heritage. Neither of the families. I ask both sides of the family. I just get American. So I got no real clue.
Let the boys at Ancestry dox you.
Yeah,
Permadox.
let the Mormons take care of that one.
Oh boy, even better.
No,
23andMe.
I'm very tempted to sign up for one of those because I'm super curious. The only thing I know about my family history is a friend of mine was like he's like a expert he's like a local historian type guy, and he did like a bunch of just because he was like some research on my last name and like connections. Apparently, one of my great ancestors was the first U.S. participant to recommend women having the right to vote.
Huh.
And so I spent my entire life now trying to undo that mistake.
Oh my gosh.
My ancestors are apparently all my ancestors were Northern and fought for the North and has a proud Sentinel. My ancestors are not smiling upon me.
See, all I'm saying is you should go a little bit further and say nobody has the right to vote.
I am of that camp, but I think democracy really is just cringe. Um, Socrates. There are a lot of great arguments against it, but I don't think any of them beat Socrates' argument about who's to pilot the ship and who's to build the ship. It's
Yeah,
just such a
yeah.
simple. I mean, I've peasant pilled most of my coworkers into not wanting to
Peasant
kill.
pilled.
Peasant tail dog. Um, that is what I call the localist, uncaring attitude. When it's like, focus on your community and not care about national politics. And why would you care what the king is doing? You don't have any power anyway. Your vote doesn't matter. Peasant pill.
Well, I mean, I'm still anarcho-Christian, so my position is 4 out of 5 people love rape. This is the meme.
We tax ourselves, we arrest ourselves, and all the Jews committed suicide. The quote
Yeah,
Mahalia
that's
Rothbard.
basically the whole thing. All right, so let's take a look. See here. I'll pause my Minecraft chest jumping. We've been on this for about an hour 45 minutes. We'll use these last 15 minutes as an outro, a little bit of a summation here.
Sounds
A
good.
summation theologia. So at the end of the day, the nature of sin is it's a cycle that is a privation of good, and it includes everything that isn't true and utter perfection.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. And
Departure from the
there's
divine
far
plan.
too many things. Yes, exactly. There's far too many things that we're doing in today's day and age that line up with that description. And whether we have the ability to do anything about it or not remains to be seen. But unfortunately, there's little to no control that we have over it. For as Paul says, I know the things that I should be doing and I don't do them, and I know the things I shouldn't be doing and I do them.
Mm.
So it is a difficult world that we live in. It is a difficult life, but that is why we need our Savior, so that we can actually overcome the darkness within. Um, Thank you very much for coming on, Caleb. Why don't you give us a little outro?
So, a little outro. I would define sin as privation, departure from the God's plan, and we've hashed that out already. Virtue, the goal isn't just to avoid sin. I feel like I can't remember who said it, but the line was, many Southern Protestants define themselves based on what they don't do, not what they do. Where they say, I don't drink, I don't curse, I don't smoke. It's like, okay, but what do you do? Do you pray? Do you go to church? Do you give to charity? Do you have any works of the spirit? And so avoiding sin isn't just a goal; it's being virtuous, being properly aligned with God. Um, and it's important to understand sin to avoid it, but it's also important to understand the virtue that we should be trying to obtain. Hesitate Irenaeus said, "The glory of God is manfully alive." So our goal is to become more aligned with Christ, to become manfully actualized. The positive theosis, as the Greeks would say. And so, don't just focus on avoidance. Focus on when you know what to avoid, then find the virtue that counters that. If you have a problem with overconsumption of something, focus on, okay, if I have an addictive personality, let's get addicted to prayer. Find that counter to it.
That's a wonderful way to look at it. I like that.
Hmm.
So, to everyone listening, thank you very much for tuning in. The I Hate the Antichrist podcast is brought to you by, yes, we have a sponsor, Dubby Energy. It's a great product. It has a good taste. They use coffee fruit extract, which has some really wonderful effects. It includes vitamins, taurine, tyrosine, glutamine, citrulline, and you can get 10% off of this drink by using the code IHTA at dubby.gg. Again, that is the coupon code IHTA for 10% off at Dubby. And also, the I Hate the Antichrist podcast is directly brought to you by webarchist.com. BJ's been great. She designs the website and helps us out there. and therefore takes care of the podcast on a huge level. She does website design in the Liberty space. So anybody who's anarchy minded or Christian minded, or even somebody who's into carnivore diet, you might find a wonderful support for your website through webarchist.com. Thank you very much, BJ, for helping us out. Caleb, anything that you're working on, any projects you're working on, you'd like the people to know about?
Sure. There's the podcast, which has a bunch of great episodes coming out soon. It's not just me. We got a great breakdown of Degrees of Knowledge by Jacques Maritain. David and I are going through Peter Crave's History of Philosophy. Connor is breaking down Chesterton and the Screwtape Letters from C.S. Lewis. We have a lot of great articles coming out. I am working on my next apologetics dialogue, which is focused on purgatory. And so be sure to stick
Okay,
around for that.
nice.
Yeah, we're on Substack at Thomist Reviews. We're on YouTube at Thomist Reviews. We're on the podcast with Thomist Reviews, and you can follow me on Twitter at Trash Socrates. I don't really I try to treat my philosophy and political stuff, but more or less it's just a window for me to rant my thoughts to, because I don't have any there's no good conversations to be had at work nowadays. So Twitter works to alleviate that desire for conversation. So I think a lot of good tweets. That's my ideas personally. There's no real. Don't come to me for theology. Don't come to me for philosophy. Do your own research and reading. If you have a question, I will happily answer it. But remember, I'm 25 and an idiot.
Thank you for coming on, Caleb. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And
It's
to
been great.
everyone else listening, for the well, I can't really think of a way of doing this now because our subject was so it wasn't like a thing or a person. I can't do my traditional outro. So everyone just keep yourself clean. Remember, the nature of sin is something that is within you that you're not going to be able to completely free yourself of in this life. Sin is dark. It's something that it will trick you into thinking that it's no big deal. But don't ever let any cope make you okay
Just to
with
add,
the darkness within you.
just to add one thing, not to throw off your outro. Either trick you with sin will trick you. It's no big deal, or that you're hopelessly lost. And to
Yeah,
the
both
despair and the
sides.
cope are things you do not need to give into.
Exactly. Don't give in to despair either. There is freedom. There is victory. It's just not found within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not found within your own power. It's found within Christ.
Amen.
Thank you everyone for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day. Done.